Hello, hello. How are you guys doing? I'm just doing a couple things to get ready today. My cats are being weird. Okay. Gonna get this going. Just 1 second. All right, you guys. So today I made sure there was no, oh, let me send this real quick. Sending, there we go. Yeah, so today I made sure that there was no participation grade for class because I really want you guys to focus on these last few classes to get these last couple projects done, right? Because we have not only do we have our reel that we're in process of making that is due tomorrow, right? But then we also have this Colorscope project, which is happening at the same time as the reel is. And so you guys really have to be on point and on time with getting all of your stuff turned in. And I've adjusted a couple of the, I've adjusted a few of the timelines within here, like for the, let me see, for the reel, I extended the date. It's due today. I would love to see, I only have 2 of your guys' reels done today. So extended it to, I think the last time to send it in is Sunday or Monday or something like that. Let me check. Cancel that. Let's go to the modules. I just want to make sure. Oh, I think I took that off. Like so that you guys will be able to turn it in. But I'm letting you know, like next week, we're also going to have a revision on that reel. So I need them in sooner rather than later so I can make so I can tell you guys what to do. And then we're going to have revisions on it. In fact, let me go through here and let me delete let me close this one real quick. Bring this over. What's up, Sarah? How you doing? I graded your butterfly one today, Sarah. I think I asked for whatever one you wrote me about last time. I think I mentioned to submit it to me through email, like through Canvas or something. I think it's for the oh gosh, it was like the motion graphics principles one. I think that's the one you were talking about. And then I'll upload it for you. But I do remember you having that in because I remember going over it with you, or going over it in class. So I'm sorry that I missed that. And then a couple of you have written me some stuff. Check your emails because I've sent you emails and stuff inside of Canvas. Not technically through email, but so the second draft reel, let's just change this already. Make sure the robot arm, the Eve, the principles, 2D, 3D, you're seeing the monarch, the hockey, sports logo, selected scenes from your Colorscope project. This one's going to be due. I'll change this one. Tomorrow is when I'll have this one up online for you guys, like when I'll publish this one for you. Don't worry about this. This one, I am going to publish this one right now for you guys so that you can see what the final portfolio link is going to be. I don't want I don't want you guys to start submitting this until after you guys are done with the rest of your stuff. And it's due on the 10th of May. And with that being said, this is your final project, right? Your final portfolio links is your final project. After, let me see here. I will not accept it after May 10th at all. Like, there's no exceptions for it. It is what it is. If you don't get it turned in, you don't get any points for it. That's how this is going to go. Because I've been talking about this for a little while now. We've been discussing, like, you know, I've been telling you guys to keep up on your work and stuff. A lot of you have been doing that. I'm not saying you're not, but I'm just telling you that you should read the parameters of this very closely, because there is information in here that you guys, especially this part on how I'm going to grade it, right? 150 total points. You're going to receive 50 points for your Colorscope project section. You know, and I'll be a little more lenient with the stuff within that, possibly depending on where we get in this. But I you know, we have enough time to get this Colorscope project done. A couple weeks is fast, but we'll be able to. And then 100 points for the reel, totaling 150 points. Now, 5 to 10 points will be deducted for every video or section in the reel that does not include the suggested changes and or is missing completely, right? So this is like an important section right here to read. Hard deadline, not accepting after. This is how it should, you guys should read this so you're aware of all of the stuff that, you know, needs to be ready for when you're getting ready to turn this in. Because then on the 11th, our last day of class, we're going to be going over these. And we'll be watching all of your guys' work from all of the semester. So, I want to kind of get you guys up to date with that. Now, for the Colorscope, this seems very daunting, right? I know seems a lot of them. We're not going to do single thing in this one. Today, we're going to be going over design briefs, and I am going to give you guys some tips and tricks on how to do some things inside of Cinema 4D. And then, these are due May 1st. Like, you guys have to get these in very quickly, or else, like, this is an easy one, right? And I really want you guys to get started on your assets for this project specifically as soon as possible. As soon as you get this design brief done and you guys know what you're putting into your video, then start making stuff for it. You know, recording your voiceover, picking music out. That's the kind of stuff that you can start doing right now this weekend to prepare for this. Sarah says you're doing good. You're feeling proud of yourself because you're getting stuff done. That's awesome. Yeah, no, but there was, yeah, I had, I think, a deadline on that one. I don't know if I did, like a close date on it. So, don't worry about that. But I do remember that was, I do remember you having that in. I just didn't remember it at the time. Get out of there. Hey, yeah, no, you're being naughty. But I'm happy that you're getting more of your work done. That's awesome. Do you have a color picked out? Have you looked over, you were in Tuesday's class, right? I think you were. I need a little caffeine pick-me-up today. I think that... Anyways, okay. So let's get started here. So I talked about last class for about 40 minutes. We talked about the Colorscope projects. I am going to go over this a little bit more again, and then we're going to start getting into different techniques and stuff. So that's okay, Sarah. If you're in this class right now, we can maybe look some stuff up. We'll go over like design brief stuff right now, and then I'll have you pick a color. Or if you want to, we can just, you know, get some ideas off of you, and maybe some ideas you'll have for yours that you might want to do. It's kind of hard because you haven't had a second to think about it, but yeah. So here are some example files from the blue Colorscope that Casey did a little while back. So you guys can watch this, and you can open these files here to see like more of a breakdown of this project. And I am going to go into the design brief here. And we're going to go over some of the stuff within here. Right? I really went through and I read a lot of kind of what was like the parameters of this specific project on Tuesday's class. Your animations are going to be around 30 to 45 seconds long. Shouldn't be much longer than that. When you're creating your script for this, it should be no more than 4 sentences. And if it's more than 45 seconds long, like if it's really long, I would definitely cut some stuff out of it, right? We have Eric. Is that you in the chat? I know you said you changed your name. Okay, Eric's going to do purple. Do you want to do a different shade of purple or just purple? By the way, purple's blue, green, purple, my favorites. That doesn't mean you guys don't have to do it. I love the other colors too. Interesting information. So if you click here, you can kind of see what these projects entail. CNN did these Colorscope projects a while ago. I mean, it was over 5 years, or 5 years ago. Hi, yes, I'm Eric. Yes, I thought so. I was like, I feel like you changed your name. Just your, like, YouTube title. But these Colorscope projects essentially are what we're going to be emulating. So we're going to kind of look over one of these today. Don't do metallics. No metallic colors, no like holographic, no glitter, nothing like that. To do something like that on 3D would take way too long to render, and we are on a tight deadline. That's what we call this right now. This would be considered a rush project if you guys were doing this. Oh, you're going to do a science thing. Cool. Yeah, because Violet was created, I think, on accident by some, like, kid. I don't know. In a laboratory, I feel like. Red and coral pink. Ooh, coral. We'll do one on that. Good call on that, Sarah. Purple or coral. So, anyways, the biggest thing about this project is that I want you guys to... where was my mouse? You're lost a little bit. There you go, buddy. Okay. Okay, I want to kind of get a blank area of the screen here. Let's change it to red. Let's get the type button out. What do I want to say here? Project parameters, right? That'll work. Should be 4 facts. Let me see here. About your color. It will be, there's going to be multiple scenes, right? You're going to have multiple scenes, but made in AE and C4D. So there is requirement 1 3D scene minimum, right? Before we didn't have that required for the 3 scene, like the custom 3 scene animation that we did, but this one, it is a requirement, and I'm going to show you guys kind of how to blend those into After Effects and kind of blending them into a 2D look. But there, yes, 1 scene is absolutely required as 3D. You will have a voiceover music, and you guys can pick out sound effects. SFX, sound effects. All right. I've got Brian on here too. What's up, Brian? I just answered your question. So you can do, it has to be a mix. Most students will tend to be heavier on After Effects because it's easier on your computer and it's easier to render versus doing it all in Cinema 4D. What else? 4 facts about your colors. Keep your sentences short and concise, right? Obviously, I want you guys to be giving the full information about it, but I don't want like a paragraph about everything. The other thing I want you guys to remember is that you need to use the skills that you've learned in class. Right? So don't get crazy. You're going to want to take everything you know, which you guys have actually learned quite a bit more than you think. When we go through these videos, we'll talk about different techniques you could use. But you want to take what you've learned in the class and really apply it to this video. I would say 80% of this video should be known skills, right? Things that you already know. 20% should be something different that you might not have done before in class, right? And we don't want to get something crazy, but that's why I really need these design briefs turned in by the 1st of May so that on Tuesday's class, I can go over these design briefs with you guys, see certain scenes that you guys have in your briefs, and then we can tackle maybe how you're going to approach that scene, whether it is in 2D or 3D. What else do I want to say? I think that's good with the parameters about this project, right? This whole Colorscope project. And so it's going to be kind of the process. Let me do this. Escape. And I want to type some more on screen. I know this isn't conducive, but project process should be as follows. You guys will do a design brief. I'm not going to have you guys do an animatic. We don't have time for that. In the design brief, you should have your script. And then you guys should have your, what is it? I think I have a list that I wrote down that I want it to be. And it should be in this order inside of your design brief. Your color palette. And then you're going to want to have your inspiration. And then you're going to want to have, and this is all for the design brief part of the project. What else on there? And then your storyboard. Okay. We're going to go over this part of the project today. The next part of the project is going to be your asset creation. And so that will be asset creation / gathering. And so that will be your VO illustrations / 3D assets, music. Actually, I'm going to put VO. Hold on. Obviously, music. So sound effects. And then you will have scenes. We will do scene 1 and 2 we're going to have the scenes due next week. Next Thursday. Possibly Friday, but I would like to see them Thursday so I can go through them. And then we are going to, so then it will technically be SFX. First draft due Thursday. I'm going to make it Friday. And then second draft due the following Tuesday. Because we only have a week. We only have 2 weeks of class left. So I'm trying to think of how I want to break this up. I know I'm in the way. Let me do this real quick. Can I move this around? Gosh dang it. We can go through it. I'll make a list. Make a note to make a list. So let's kind of go through these right now. Hey, Angelina. Hey, everyone. I'm happy you guys are in class today. It's getting heavy in here. And then in between this color project, right, we're going to have, obviously, you have your reels due. And then we are going to have we're going to have a revision round on the reel. I'm going to give you guys feedback and then just submit the feedback done on the reel is also going to be for your, that's going to be your final. I'm not going to have like a full revision for the reel done in between this because this is a heavy duty project. And we're kind of short a week on it, right? We kind of lost some time with spring break there and a couple of the classes ran a little later. So I'm going to give you guys grace on these, right? But we still need to get them done. And so, let's go through a reference video and kind of see what I am talking about. We'll go back here, CNN, the Colorscope videos. Let's just look at this one. What is this one? All right, so this one goes through multiple. Let's do orange. Let's look at orange. And I'm going to turn the audio on so you guys can hear. I'm going to talk a little over the audio.
Orange.
So I'm going to turn it down.
Sunsets, budget airlines, traffic cones, and Protestants.
Notice here.
Associated with joy, love, and immortality. In China, orange marigolds are called the flowers of eternal life. But the color can also be toxic. The finest orange pigments consist of arsenic and sulfur and make very effective rat poison. The color's been a national symbol of the Netherlands since the time of William of Orange, and it's believed in the 1600s Dutch farmers developed the first orange carrots. For a long time, Europeans didn't have a word for orange. They just called it yellow-red. The name eventually came from a citrus fruit that grew in Asia. The Persians called it narang, and the English called it orange. Oranges.
So while you guys are watching this, one of the things to point out is that you're noticing that, you know, and pay attention to this more, but what you're seeing versus what you're hearing being said are different, right? So they don't have to be the same thing. What you see versus what you hear is different. I want you guys to think less literal with this project and more abstract. So one of the scenes that we just looked at, like the carrot, right? How it had gone, how the scene specifically had gone, they were talking about the royalty of the color, and like kind of they're talking about the origin of the name, and how the Dutch started making orange carrots. Well, the carrots obviously start off white, and then they're growing and growing and growing and growing more further down the line, down the kind of represent like a representational timeline over how long it would take to essentially you're like a special breeding a carrot to be orange specifically, and that how it then became oranges made in China. But instead of like obviously showing China, it's boxes just with Chinese symbols on it, right? And it obviously represents like some kind of Asian culture, Asian country. And so these are great things to start looking at, you know, like with Persia, talking about this.
Persians called
Persian rugs are obviously like a big part of Persia, and so it's instead of showing a map on here, I have a rug. So there's a little bit of like disjointedness happening with, you know, it's just not disjointed. They're cohesive because they're abstract ideas and thoughts that are just general knowledge and things that we all pick up and understand, and then they're applied to what's being said, right? I'm not expecting you guys to get like this in-depth and crazy. These are very, very, I mean, these are projects done by professional animators and people, like, these are people who dedicated a lot of time to getting this project done. You guys don't have that much time, but, like, start thinking about that stuff, right? And if you're having trouble finding certain things online to describe something, you know, putting things into a thesaurus and looking up different descriptive words and different phrases and things that might bring up a different thought to you, right? Like if I just say the color orange, what are the things you think of? Citrus fruit, sunsets. You think of, like, there's just a lot of things that you think. Traffic cones. It does have a lot of, oh, we've got a whole class today, you guys. I'm into it. I don't want you guys to be super nervous. I just want you guys to know that we got to buckle down and get this work done, right? And that's why I've been saying keeping up on those edits and stuff. I will say this, like your guys' projects that have been after spring break and leading up to this point right now have been less and less feedback on them because you guys are understanding things different. And you're taking the feedback that you've gotten in past projects in class, right? And you've been applying that kind of stuff to now. So you guys don't have as much to go through. And putting together a reel shouldn't take as long of time. Maybe editing it to the beat and stuff takes a little bit longer. But if you guys have all of those, like, videos already done and updated with the feedback, then you guys should be good. But yeah, this is something, another thing you notice is pretty much a monochromatic color palette. That is something I want you guys to pick out here, is that the colors are all based in orange, and there is nothing but white here is the only other color that's being used. These other colors here, these ones that look yellow, they are still orange.
And the English called it orange.
Obviously, there's
way. Are now the 6th most popular fruit in the world, and 71 million tons of them are grown every year. In their natural state, they're often green or yellow, so many manufacturers dye them with artificial pigments and gases. Because to a lot of people, something's not quite right about an orange that isn't orange.
These are very much, I mean, there's a lot of work in these videos, and there's a lot of match cuts and a lot of morphing and stuff that's happening here, which we might not always get into, but you guys can start trying to do that. I mean, I've seen what you guys have worked on so far in other classes, and so, or in your other projects, and so I have faith that you guys are going to be able to do that. So I really want you to go through and look at these videos on the Colorscope channel right there. Here, if you click on this, this is past student works. This is where you guys are going to feel a little bit more comfortable watching these videos and understanding what past students have done for this specific project. So if I were to play, let's try teal. Let's play this one. This was by Bryce. Let me see down here. Peltier. I don't remember Bryce in the class, but
Color of mental and spiritual balance. It combines the calming properties of blue with the renewal qualities of green, creating a new color that represents open communication and clarity of thought.
you see just rotational things zooming in. You see motion blur that we have here, moving something along a path, right? We saw trim paths, I think, in the beginning here. This is obviously just like a line. These are a shape with repeaters on it. You know, great place for trim paths there. All you're seeing here, right, is the scene is close up. So you would have to make your composition larger. And then when you pull out, then the scene, right? And this is the beauty of using vector, is because you, no matter how close up or how far away you are, it is sharp, right? So things to think about. Let me just continue kind of going through here.
Originates from a common duck across the Eurasian continent, known as the Eurasian or common teal. Teal was a fad during the 90s, with many sports teams adopting the color. It was also featured in Windows 95's default wallpaper.
These are great representations and stuff of the color teal.
Annie Marr, who submitted the color into a major global survey conducted by G.F. Smith, made teal.
You know, that's a good one to watch. You guys can watch Belle,
Black
who
is the color of omnipotence.
great way to represent death and darkness by like grave sites, right? This is a 3D scene that's happening here. Maybe this one's a 2D scene.
And resurrection.
No, that looks more, this is her
In the
3D.
countries of Japan and the United Kingdom, black cats are thought to bring fortune in the form of good luck and wealth. Maybe even in the form of the extremely rare gemstone, black cat's eye scapulite.
Cool. Belle did a really good job on animating that. So if you guys need help, you know, you guys can go to her. But I really suggest kind of going through these and watching these to grab inspiration and see what your peers have been doing through class. I've seen you guys using different kinds of transitions and stuff and working with being more creative in your projects, which is great because you guys have been I don't want you to be nervous about this because it's essentially like what we just did, except we're just adding a 3D scene. So I don't want you guys to get freaked out. I want you guys to feel confident about this and excited. Just the only thing that is the tight deadline, right? And you're going to get those at some point in your career. You're going to get a deadline where they're like, hey, you need this done in a week. And guess what? You end up working late nights. And that's just, it is what it is. But you get it done, it looks great, and the client's happy. You've got a client for life, right? So, something to remember. I want you guys to read through this carefully, and I want you guys to research. Make sure you're expanding your research beyond Wikipedia articles, right? Like, actually do some good research and stuff on your colors here. Yes, you can do any color. Brian asked in the chat if we can do any color. Yes, that is fully allowed. The only thing is that it has to be, let me see here. Let me type. This is a good time to type. Can choose any color. It can go from like chartreuse, which is a yellowish green, right? It's technically a green color, to lavender, which is a lighter tint of purple, technically. And then, you know, anywhere in between. So it doesn't have to be, you can do forest green. It doesn't have to just be orange, black, green, things like that. You can do that if you want to, or you can pick a specific color. We've had students in the past do maroon and burgundy and things like that. If you, you're sad this semester's over, well, there's plenty more animation classes to take. So you can have plenty more work to do. And if you guys just happen to want to spend the money and take the class again, you can, but you will be doing the projects all over again. So you can choose any color, but the color palette has to be monochromatic. What does that mean? It means all one color. It can't be like complementary colors happening in there. I'm going to click on, in fact, before I show you guys how to do that, I want you guys to also know you can pick colors that have already been used. Just try and find different facts. Different facts, right? So I don't want you guys to get intimidated by, yeah, cerulean blue. That's a great one to look, you know, like the more you get specific, I will say this, the more specific you are, the harder it might be to find facts about a color. If you're researching a color for more than 45 minutes, I suggest picking a different color. If you can't find enough facts within that time, move on. Like, just make the choice to cut that one out and go to a next color. Because I don't want you guys to sit there forever, just be like, I can't find a color with enough facts or anything like that. At that point, 45 minutes to an hour, and then move beyond that. I would probably, within a half an hour, if I couldn't find enough facts on it. If I couldn't find 3 facts within a half an hour to write 3 to 4 sentences, then I would just be, it's time to move on. Yeah, absolutely. You can do red. Do your favorite colors, you guys. I'm all for that. You don't have to, Sarah, you don't have to do coral. I just said I like coral. I like that color as well. So whatever colors you guys want, you can do. I'm not gonna say no. The only thing I'm saying no to is no metallics, no weird things, right? Like no holographic, no glitter, no chrome, nothing like that. It's just not going to work. So the color palette, picking your color palette, if you just click here, right here on the Adobe Create Color wheel, you can go through, I showed this on class on Tuesday, and you will select monochromatic right here. And then you can pick your color, whatever color you want, right? You can color pick from something else. I mean, this little thing goes across screen. So if I wanted this black color, I could color pick that. Now with you guys, just so you guys know that when you are moving these around, right? Obviously each one represents something different. We don't want that. Let me click monochromatic here. I think it is based off of this one. You just pick and drag. Like if we were going to do like a red. That one's kind of like almost like a coral red in there, right? The one thing that I noticed, or I want you guys to notice, is we have hex numbers here, right? These are going to be important. You can write these down. Well, you're going to have this color palette inside of your design brief anyways, so I would just screen grab this so you have this permanently. And then you also have the RGB totals in here as well. And let's say you've got one color that you just hate, right? Like we've got this is more like less red in my opinion. There we go. It's more of a red. And here's like definitely a burgundy type color. But let's say I was like, oh gosh, I really hate this. But I need to keep a dark color in there so that there's enough contrast in between. Then just take this and bump it up. Move this more into the red a little bit, maybe if you want to. You know, find maybe you've got just a really dark version of the red right there, like closer to what you had before. You can, you know, change these values around to find something more of what you like. And then I don't know if you can lock this set base color. Like if we, this is your base color. The one in the middle is always your base color. I don't know if you can lock these in. You can also choose, I don't know if you can do the monochromatic color palette on coolers. Let's try this. No cookies for me tonight. I'm on a diet. JK, just kidding. So I clicked on that. Let me see if I can change. Yeah, sometimes you have to be a member for certain stuff. We don't want a collage. Adjusting the palette. I would just use Adobe. You guys might also be able to look into, here's, just type in monochromatic color palettes. And you can like kind of look this way too. But I really suggest, I personally think that you guys will have more success off of the Adobe website here, picking your color. Yeah, like you're wanting to use the eyedropper tool to find the correct color of like something off of a photo? Is that what you're saying, Angelina? You can use whatever you need to do in order to get the color, like if you have an initial color that you know, and it's like in a photograph or something, you can bring that photograph into like Photoshop, eyedropper that, and to find like the RGB or the hex number, and then you can manually type that hex number into Adobe. Like if I were to go here, let's just say I knew a hex number, right? And I was just like typed in H or something like that. And it came up like, obviously it's obviously way different. It's a blue color palette now, but like you can go in here and you can manually edit these. So if you need to find if you already have an existing color that you like a lot and want to create a monochromatic color palette off of that, you can type that hex number in there or the RGB values here. And then it should add that in here as well. I do not believe you want to work in RGB mode. You don't want it to be CMYK. Remember, that's for print. We work in RGB for screens. Yeah. So when we talked a little bit about storyboarding as well, and like how it doesn't need to be super detailed, right? Like the storyboard, if we just if we look at this design brief right here, these are student examples of the design brief, right? His name, the color they picked. I selected this color because blue is my favorite color, right? Blue is the color of serenity. I suggest picking a first sentence that's very similar to something like that. Did you notice when we saw Belle's on black, she said black is the color of omnipotence. So, you know, it's good to introduce the color in that way in your script. Blue is the world's favorite color. It's calming, relaxing, gives a feeling of peace, but also an impression of authority, right? So these are like good, concise. They're not so long. If you're reading this and it's way too long, then get rid of some stuff. Then notice we have a screen grab of the color palette here. I suggest you guys just type in the hex numbers or copy and paste them in here, as well as like as a text section of the document, because that way you can copy and paste things, right? This is really hard to see. I would have to zoom in really hard to see that, but you guys can use a color picker if you want to bring this in as well. What's the world's least favorite color? I don't know. I'm going to guess, but you guys will have to look that up for me and just let me know. I'm going to guess it's like yellow or orange. I mean, maybe brown if you're thinking like that, but I'm just thinking of the 6 primary colors. I would have to say like probably orange. I don't feel like I hear a lot of people saying they like the color orange or one of my good friends likes yellow. Really likes the color yellow. I like all the colors. Like, they don't bother me. When you're a designer, you like them all. You should. I am not a yellow hater. And then what you guys have to do, so after you have your script here, your description of why you like the color, you have your script written here, color palette here, and then here are your screen captures of the videos that you've watched where you show you like specific scenes and inspiration, and then making sure you give reasons to why you like those scenes. Or transitions or something. Please discuss the scene with the compelling juxtaposition of a voiceover and animation, right? Like, and then Fabio said, when he said the color can also be toxic and the beetle that was walking on top of the flower died, like describing the voiceover, right? So you guys can describe in here why you specifically like certain scenes on here. He has those written. And then finally, after you put your inspiration, then I want to see your storyboard, right? Great example of a storyboard. Just very simple drawings. Nothing, you can, if you sketch faster, pen and paper, then do that and just take pictures and insert it into your PDF right this. Because I want you guys to be turning this into me as a PDF. But like, I'm not going to be judging you. I do not care how your sketches look. They can be the worst sketch in the world, and as long as it conveys what's going to happen in the scene, I'm fine with it. Like, stick people. Well, you shouldn't be using people. let me say that. It can be different, like you can, but like not fully animating people. Oh yeah. 5% of the world likes yellow. At the welcome home, what is that? Sarah, what are you talking about there? The welcome home ARG? I'm not sure what that is. Is it a show or something? But then you guys are, so back to this, right? Storyboard, a description of the assets that you're going to need. This is going to be for you guys, right? So once you do this and you're like, oh, okay, I need these assets, like, let's start drawing them. Obviously, it doesn't have to be, like, massively complicated backgrounds or anything like that. This isn't like the 3-scene custom animation that we did where you guys have to do, like, all sorts of crazy backgrounds. The nice thing about this being monochromatic is kind of that less is more, right? Like, if you have a solid just background, it's just easier to work with. You guys can have, like, one intricate background and stuff, but, alternate reality game. Made by an artist. Oh, cool. There's also this game called Hue. I'm going to put it in the chat. And it's an independent game where you use colors to solve problems. Like, you use different, like, it's like they change the blending mode when the colors interact with each other. And those, like, you solve problems throughout a maze to get there. Like, it's not really a maze, but it's just through the levels in order to level up. But yeah, cool. What you're going to have, if you're going to have any sound effects, list them here. Your animation techniques that you're going to want to use, you're going to want to list here. It's like the perfect blueprint, right? And it's unfortunate that not every company that you will go to work for will do these. That's what sucks, is that these are such a great planning process and way to lay out a video before it's done, that when companies don't do that, you see it in their work. You see that everything they just produce is just ends up being boring because they don't spend that time behind it really planning it out. And so, but this is really going to help you guys to gather all of your thoughts and to really have a game plan of what you guys need done. And so that is what I want. This is exactly what I want turned in on the 1st, which is Monday by midnight. So I can go over these with you guys. on Tuesday. And like I said, I can look then at the scenes that you guys want to be using. I wish I wouldn't have closed that. Let me see if I can reopen. That way I can go over those design briefs with you guys on Tuesday, give you like feedback on that, and possibly go over maybe some options you would have to animating those specific things. And then I will also be trying, you know, get anything that needs feedback on it, get it into me this weekend as soon as you can. Like if it's by tomorrow, then it's tomorrow. I don't care. Like it has to be in soon so that you guys can like have your reels ready to go and stuff and have all this stuff done. So let's kind of give some examples here inside of Cinema 4D, because I think that is going to be the one place where you guys might have a little bit harder of a time creating some things. So I'm going to give you some techniques today that will that we've done in past classes that usually students like to use. I am just opening up Cinema 4D. I have not seen hues and cues. Welcome from storyline so far. Anyways, so let's do, I think there's one, I don't know if I can find the one on blue. Does this have all of them? If I click on this one. There is a section in blue. Maybe it's in purple. Yeah, it is in this one.
Purple is a marriage of opposites.
Morphing. Very difficult to do in 2D, but very easy to do in 3D. The morphing is like, you know, this one is obviously like the shape is, it looks like they're doing a little bit of masking here. This actually looks 2D, but I'm gonna show you guys a technique on how to do this in 3D inside of Cinema 4D that you guys can benefit from a little bit more. I think I'm gonna link you guys to some other stuff later. Let's play this one.
Humans can see
That's
green.
a cool one. The morphing, same thing.
This might be because our ancestors lived in the forest and their lives depended on distinguishing
That's easy, right? Like obviously we have a couple leaves that are flying and going along a
between
path.
the plants around them, the nutritious
And just like
from
those,
the poisonous.
that's
Plants are
cool.
green because of a molecule called chlorophyll. It also drives
We go over this technique in a class that I'll link to you guys as well. But yeah, so the morphing thing is something really cool that we do in Cinema 4D. It's much easier here. I'm going to shut off my camera because I need you guys to be able to see the attributes panel. So if you can't send, by the way, guys, I see you guys like want to side chat a little bit. Slack will work. You guys can send each other side messages in inside of Slack, and you can absolutely send links in there, much easier. And so, yeah, I would do that. Okay, so let's create a couple different objects here. I'm going to create a cylinder. And then I am also going to create let's do, we use this like a platonic last time. I'm going to move these kind of out of the way. Let me move my scene a little bit here. A little more like this. Make it a little smaller. We take the cylinder. I want to kind of get them into an initial, maybe a little bit shorter. Not so wide. Let's increase the segments in a little bit. We'll do that later. But I'm going to bring that kind of up. I'm going to get my camera angle to something that I'm going to like. It's not bad. And then let's change the rotation on this a little bit. There. Cool. And so let's kind of animate these objects just hovering together and then maybe possibly colliding into each other. So I'm going to hit E on the keyboard and I want to move my playhead to the beginning and I'm going to select this, go to coordinates, and I am going to keyframe all of the positions. Move ahead to like, I don't know, 8 frames. Just a little bit. Maybe obviously over here a little bit more. Right. Don't forget to record. That's the one thing I would like, I always forget to record. Kind of back here. Maybe a little bit over there. Move back further. I don't know. Record. We're just going to do a little quick hovering kind of motion. Well, I guess let's move the key right there. I'm just going every 8 keyframes or so. Actually, let's go back. Keyframe those again. And then finally move to the center where it should be. Let me see here. Go back here. We'll just keyframe it there. And then I'm going to do, let's add some rotations into this. So for this one, I'll just keyframe that there, go back here, just kind of change the rotation a bit, keyframe it. I don't want the changes to be too wild because I don't want them to be too fast, right? So if this seems a little fast, just make sure your rotations and your stuff aren't, there's not like a massive value change, right? You guys could use a little bit of the vibrate tag here as well. I know we did that at one point. Move that, keyframe, and then back to here. And we'll just keyframe it going back a little, going over. So then when I play it, that was obviously really fast. I want to see my keyframes here. I forgot to shut my camera off. I am shutting it off now. This is just an option. So Brian asked if this is like a requirement. No, these are just different techniques that students have used throughout the past in their previous projects that work out really well for them. And these are just like new techniques you guys have not used in class so far. I'm going to stretch this out, obviously. I want it to move a lot slower. This last one was kind of, let me just move my camera. I want this last section to be, where's it here? Okay. I want this last section of it to be more towards the middle. So I'm going to select this, go back to the coordinates there, hit E, and let's just kind of move this back here. Keyframe those coordinate changes. There we go. Play this. Okay. Normally I would do all the easing in this, but for time's sake, we're not going to. And then I'm going to make the cylinder kind of do the same thing. So let's keep in the position, move to the same spot, move it around. Actually, let's go back real quick and also keyframe the rotation, and then move here, and we're going to move this kind of over down more a little bit. Let's change the rotation on it slightly. Okay, we're going to keyframe all of these changes. Move here. We're going to move my camera, hit E. I'm going to keep this one a little bit closer, kind of to where I want it to end up. R. Keyframe the changes. Let's move to here. Not too far away. Cool. Changes made, changes recorded, and then final. You want them to be like on top of each other, touching essentially. So I'm gonna move that here. I need to move around. See that they're kind of centered with each other. Move this one here. Cool. Change your rotation. Like that. Keyframe. You guys would normally go through and ease this after. So just kind of, whoop, they meet in the middle. Okay, cool. We've got some motion down here. Now we have to, like, obviously they're kind of joining, but we need to make them morph together. So morphing is like kind of where two become one, right? It just melts into each other and it creates kind of like this globular type thing where it just moves, it transforms from one shape into the other. And so there's two objects that allow you to morph and fuse these objects together. And these are the volume builder and the volume mesher. And those are specifically this button right here. And so if I hold down and click, I'm going to add a volume builder, and then I'm going to hold on and add a volume mesher again. Now, when you guys are using the volume builder and volume mesher, always remember that the objects are, well, hold on, let me do this because it'll look like this. The mesher is the parent to the builder, and the builder is a parent to your objects. Gosh. Okay, you remember this. If you make sure that your orders are like this when you start to parent things in here and essentially attach the volume builder and mesher together with your objects, then you'll be fine. You won't have any problems. And so that looks like me taking this volume builder and dropping it into the mesher, and then taking these two objects and dropping those into the builder. Now all of a sudden, right, they get all weird and gross and not, they don't look good, right? Let's hit NB on here so that we can see like all the shading and stuff that's kind of happening. But when I start to move this together, right? And I don't know if, yeah, the scrubbing still works on this. At a certain point, the scrubbing kind of stops, right? Obviously, I would want a different camera angle where I could get this section here in view. But notice how they join each other. If I hit NA, again, they are becoming one object at this point when they meet in the middle there. And so we want to, the cylinder, everything kind of looks really weird and gross at this point. Like it's not, let me get that better angle on this first. So that while I'm watching this, when I scrub through, we see everything pretty much perfect right there. That works. Technically, I would want to center this composition right there. So maybe at some point they almost go off screen. I would reanimate this differently, obviously. And then, or I would just turn this like this. Maybe put it here. And that way when they meet, they're close to the middle. So you might want to lock in your view and stuff while you're doing the animation. Make sure it doesn't go outside of your view. But, you know, these don't look very good right here. The objects are really grainy and noisy looking weird. And so let's go into the cylinder, right? And we're going to increase the cylinder rotation segments right here. One of the things, though, that you notice is that the mesh around the objects looks totally different. It's like made up of all these little cubes and stuff like that. And so we're going to be messing around with that in a little bit. But if you just increase the size of your rotation segments, that's going to initially help out, right? Because that's increasing the geometry there. The platonic one, not worried about that. But we want to kind of smooth this out so it's not so harsh looking. I'm going to hit NA so that you can see more of like what the geometry looks like. So I'm going to select on this volume builder object here. And down in the bottom, there is a thing that says SDF smooth with a little iron by it. You're going to want to click on that and then just select the SDF smooth. And that is obviously going to smooth your objects out. My cylinder, where did you go? I think there is, maybe it's because there's too many segments. Let me drop this down a little bit. Nope, it should be showing up. It is there, but maybe the strength, when I move the strength out, okay. All right, so when you have the smoothness that's happening right here, you've added it onto there. You can come down here into your filter and of the smooth, right? And you can increase or decrease the strength of that to essentially like you're smoothing out, if you're thinking of it like clay, right? You're smoothing all of those hard edges. And the nice thing about this is this can be keyframed. But here, the voxel size, this refers to the size of those little boxes that we were talking about. So if I hit NB again and you see all these little tiny cubes and boxes, if I increase the voxel size, that's going to increase the size of those little boxes. So we don't want to increase it, but we want to decrease it. So I'm going to put it down to 3. Obviously that makes much more geometry, but it looks so much better. If I go back to NA, this is much closer to what I had in the beginning versus what it was, you know, afterwards. So I'm going to even drop it down to 2 so it's even smoother than that. And then now we're going. We want to start we want it to be pretty solid and obviously whatever shape it's going to be that you initially want it here when it's floating around. And we only want it to really start to smooth out and to join together kind of like when it's close together. And so what I would do here at this point is I would start to animate the strength. And so that when they're fully joined, we're at 100% up here. And so we're going to watch this play through, and then they should, oh, I did not keyframe this. Remember to record it, change the strength, there we go. So then as we play through, they kind of get together and glob together, right? But we want this to kind of form like a spherical object and not just be this weird kind of shape. That's obviously not what we want. A couple of things that you guys can do. Well, I'll get to that in a little bit here. Let me see. Let me click off of there. Let's create a sphere. because that's what we want it to kind of turn into. I'm going to move the sphere over so that it is, right, you guys might benefit from putting a camera in at this point. I want the sphere to be over top of the shape. It's almost there. I would move it further this way, move it further this way. Close enough, right? So if I move around, it just needs to be slightly bigger. Or what I could do is I could just animate, like when this starts to come up to here, I could go into the cylinder where you can obviously see like parts of it are showing through right here. And you can disable the shape. You can animate that, right? So if I were to go into, I think it's under basic, you can keyframe this switch on and off. Like you would, if I were on frame 69 here, I'd keyframe this as enabled, and then I'd move to frame 70 and uncheck that box right there, and then keyframe it. And so that essentially just makes your shape disappear inside of your view. So that is one option you guys can do to kind of make this go away. But let's animate the scaling of this object for when they start to come in. So I am going to select the sphere, and let's work backwards a little bit. We want it to be, let's increase this size just slightly there. Actually, I want them to kind of be about the size of both objects. And so I'm going to keyframe this because I'm going to work backwards. And probably right about, we're going to want it to go a little bit higher first so it kind of has like a bounce to it. In fact, let me go back here and just select the sphere and move these a couple over. And then move a couple keyframes back. And we're going to kind of create a bounce that happens. So, you know, I want you guys to think of the squash and stretch that you've used and the bounce and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger, 1.2, 1.2, and then I'm going to keyframe all of these. And then I'm going to move back a little bit further and keyframe this at 0. Record that keyframe. So while I scrub through, what's going to happen is the objects are going to merge together, and this ball is going to scale up and settle down to make the ball. But we need to obviously move these keyframes around a bit so that it helps out. First of all, I think I'm going to stretch the time just a tiny bit here. And then I'm going to move these keyframes over just a couple there. And possibly right here is where I want that to start scaling. Pop. So it's going to look like shoo. This happens awfully fast, so I might just move this one back here. Maybe this will be okay. I don't want it to start scaling until you can't see anything. Let's watch it all the way through. Pop. Okay, so what would I do here? Probably move this over. I'm probably going to select these ones and, oop, we don't want all of it, just the sphere. Maybe I would do that. Move this over. You know, just playing around with these a little bit, the timing of everything. I think I like that a little bit more. And then kind of right here, when the ball covers up everything, is when I would go into this platonic shape and I would keyframe enabled. Right there, I would move this over here. And then right there, I would keyframe that off. So then shut it off, click that. And I would do the same for the cylinder. So one keyframe here where it's enabled. And then move one frame over, disable it, and record that keyframe. so that you don't even notice the disappearing of the objects as that expands and goes up, right? Obviously, like, I would want to spend more time on this and maybe make the shapes different from the beginning, but here's just like a generalized idea of a way to morph it. And I would definitely play around with the keyframes, because the slowing that happens there, I would probably want to just, let's extend this out and see what it looks like that way. I like that. I don't mind that. Let's see, this is when the shapes turn off, so I would maybe select the enable, disable keyframes. Where's that one? This one, move them over. This one, move them over. Okay, cool. And so you can add vibrate tags to these, right? We would do that by selecting, let's say I was looking at everything from here. Play it, creates the ball, morphs into it. I could even possibly even drop the sphere into the volume builder, so it is also, that is what you should do, actually, is make sure that you add that sphere into the volume builder so that it morphs with the shapes as it's expanding and getting larger. Now, obviously, the thing about the sphere, right, is it looks like a disco ball at the moment. Well, we can fix that by selecting this and increasing the object segments. Just increasing them a lot there, so it pops up and looks really nice. There you go. And that way, if you change the volume builder in any way, you can always do that. So I'm going to save this project. Art 184, new folder. Are you guys enjoying this, seeing how to do this stuff right now? Just going to do this. New folder C40. Okay. Open that up. Morph shapes. Okay. Let's add the vibrate tag to these shapes. So if I just go to right click on the shape and then go to animation tag vibrate, I can add that on there. And then I can copy and I think paste that tag to the cylinder. It doesn't work like that, so you just have to add it to both of them. Let me delete this additional platonic there. And then like, let's say I wanted the rotation here to be more random, right? Like, you could enable the rotation. Like, if I didn't have any of the rotation already added in there, I could enable the rotation and record that there, right? Until it morphs together. So I would want it to stop like right here. I would check off and record that. But while it is over here, I would probably increase this number, the frequency, obviously way lower than this, 0.2 possibly, and then the amplitude for the rotation, let's say 100 degrees in each direction would work. Oh, not 1,000. But that should be okay. And so then when I play this, it's going to have additional rotations to it. And you can do that to your cylinder, your sphere, your platonic. You can add these little animation tags to anything. And then let's say, let's go ahead and say we want to create like a custom shape, right? Like maybe you guys don't want these shapes, but you want to do something like a heart. And so I would, let me hide this. go into my front view. And I would select the spline pen tool here and probably zoom out of this slightly. And then I would just create with my spline pen tool, when you just start clicking, it'll add a spine. Let's go a spline, and let's go up to and over 4. And then over 5 and down, I don't know, how many is that? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4. And then we'll come over here, select that, and then so we want to make sure we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many are we here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. Right up here. Make them as equal as you can, and then up. What was that? Over, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. There. And there, and all of a sudden I have like a heart shape, right? But if I want to if you want to do multiple splines, you can do that. You just have to click off of that object and then continue drawing. But I want to, let me grab my pen tool, and I'm going to select this point, this point, this point, and this point, holding down Shift. And I want to essentially like round these out, right? And so I'm going to right click on them. I'm going to hit chamfer. And then if I click and drag, it will start to smooth these out. Now, something that you guys should know is that when you click and drag, you're adding additional vertex points. So the more you click, you're going to add more and more and more, right? So you just kind of want to click once and just continue to scroll until you get this shape here. And so I have a spline that's shaped like a heart. And if we just put that into an extrude object, then we will have a shaped heart with geometry, right? And so an awesome way to kind of add your own custom shapes into here, which you can then animate, right? Like let's say this is great, but the anchor point is too high and I want to animate it more from the center. You can drop it right down there and then just make sure you unclick that, right? And so when you go to rotate, it'll rotate from the center and not from other weird locations. Now, I think that this should, because we did it in our front view, it should be the same thickness all the way around. You can then add this into a subdivision surface to smooth it out. That looks really crazy, and I think that's because of the way that the, actually kind of looks weirdly cool, but it has to do with the extrude. Maybe the spline. Type Bezier. Let's see here. What I would possibly do, oh, not delete the whole thing, but I would drag this out of the subdivision surface, and I would possibly make a copy of my spline, Control C, Control V, drop that down at the bottom that we don't need to see or use at the moment, but we have it just in case. And then I would hit C on this to create an editable object. And then I would possibly drop it into the subdivision surface. Let's see how that works. Because we have all of these vertices here, it is making them look all weird. So no, that's not what I want to do. It would be under, let me go back here. I would think maybe of a different way to smooth this out. Let's undo this. Maybe under the extrude we can show our geometry here. We want to simplify this area here so it's kind of like one. That's not doing anything for us right now. Let me go down here, select the spine, select all of the vertexes. I don't want to be in the rotate tool. I want to be in that tool. You can round it, you can subdivide it. Maybe we just have to subdivide it more on the side. Either way, you could also just change the cap on it, on the extrude. You can round the cap. That will help to round out the heart. Oh, that's kind of neat. So you can mess around with the cap on that. The thickness of the extrude, like if you don't want it to be so... Let's drop that down. I'm going to hit an A. Oop, not that. So I don't have to see that right now. Updating that. You know, messing around with it a little bit more, and then you kind of have like a heart shape, which you can also then drop that extrude into the volume mesher, right? Into the volume builder. And then when you get to this section right here, as long as the heart, oh, it is touching right there. So then if I were to take this extrude and move this forward a bit more, and then scale it down significantly, like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and you can see that this entire thing is then molded into here, right? So we've created all of these different morphing shapes and techniques that you can use in creating like different shapes with the spline tool as well, and using the extrude and just kind of letting you guys see the versatility of this volume mesher and this volume builder, right? And so it's essentially like the same technique. So like if you didn't want it to be the platonic and the cylinder, you could have a heart and a cross, right? Like, or an X or something like that. You could create that and then have them interacting with each other. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be simple shapes. You can make something a little bit more visually interesting. Now, materials, right? Let's talk materials for making 2D and 3D. Or I'm sorry, like, so I would call it, we've called it in the past 3D for 2D. Which means that you want it to actually look as flat as possible, or that it should fit into a 2D video, right? You don't really want to be able to see that this is a 3D scene. And so there's a couple different ways, there's a couple different options that we can use here. Let me hide the heart. I'm going to pull that outside of here. I'm going to delete the subdivision surface and then just hide that. I think right here. Okay, obviously we want to be this department. Probably pulled away a little bit further. Okay. Cool. That'll work. And so let's go ahead and open our material builder here. And if we double click, we can create a new one. Let's name this flat. Because what we're going to do is essentially just double click on this and we're going to shut off everything but the luminance channel. And so if you click here then, and we will go for like that kind of, maybe we can try and get that corally red color. Or I know, Eric said he was going to do purple, right? So we can get a purple going here. Like, let's say we wanted this purple color. I'm going to make it a little bit less saturated there so we can see. And then I'm just going to drop this onto the mesh, the volume mesher. And then I can drag this, and they're just flat. If I hit Control R, they just look flat. Obviously, I have to remove this from my render as well. But yeah, so they're flat there. If I turn on my interactive render region, increase the size a little bit here, let's increase this, and I were to play this, the interactive render region, like once we start using dynamics and stuff, it starts getting a little crazy. But then like right where they start to mesh here, you can see that it's just kind of forming shape, right? So here's a flat option that you can use. You can also, I think you can animate the color, right? So if you wanted it changing from where they're separate to when they start to merge here. So, because a lot of students like to do like the, obviously with primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, you don't add anything to get those colors. Those colors just are, right? But with secondary colors, yellow, orange, and violet, you have to mix your primaries in order to get those colors. And a lot of students will mention like certain colors are a mixture of two colors together, right? And so you can animate that. So let's say that first we're going to hit color and we're going to make this red, like a right there. And so keyframe that. And then by the time they're here, they change to, I don't know, like you would have a different, you could have a different texture on each of these objects. And then let's say go back to that purple color, right? Change it there. And so then we have like an animated, like the colors animating, coming together, changing like that. So that's pretty neat. Another one that we can do, let's think about like how to add, let me talk about this. So strokes, not the kind, not a medical stroke. We're not talking about medical strokes. When to use a stroke. Only if all of your other assets have a stroke is when you should use a stroke. If you're creating assets that are flat vector assets that do not have a stroke around them, then don't worry about this technique. But if all of your other assets have strokes on them, then this is something you're going to want to think about using, because you want that consistency throughout the video, right? And so what I'm going to do there is I am going to do the same thing. So I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to name it with stroke. And I'm going to double click on that, and then I'm going to shut off the color, reflectance, and turn on the luminance. And then under the luminance, let's go under the texture, and then we're going to add Fresnel, which is right here. Spelled like Fresnel right there. That's when you want to add under the texture. And then you're going to want to double click on this. And remember, let's actually drop this onto, let's drop this one onto like the platonic here and see if they end up looking different. And let's take this material and just put it on the cylinder. Is it working that way? It is not. So it has to be on the mesher. Yeah, okay. It can't, the material tags cannot be on the separate objects. They have to be on the volume mesher. But let's just look at this while we're doing that. So you double click into the, you go in, let me start over. Double click on your material, go to your luminance channel, double click on that gradient after you add the texture. And then remember that when you tighten up this, your nodes, so that they create like a sharper line, and the further left they go, the thinner of, and the more of a harder edge you're going to have to your outline that's happening there. And so we kind of want to crush these values. And so this one I would turn like, I don't know, like let's say my color, we're still keeping that violet color. Start adding these into here. Okay, right? And we start to get this kind of stroke type looking thing happening. And then if I move the camera a little bit, you notice that it's just kind of all around the object there. You're going to want to make sure that your like white or black, whatever color stroke you want to have, is further to the left of the gradient bar here, so that it is the color on the outside. Because if you flip them, then it will be opposite of that, and we do not want that. So this is a way to create that. Let's see here. There we go. We get a nice hard edge there doing that. Where they meet perfectly is where you can do that. And then if I hit Control R, you see you have a nice kind of hard stroke there happening. You can see it right here as well. If you right click on that and open the window, you can see that there. So that's another way to use material. Let me see here. So let's think about the size of this stroke, right? Is determined by how far over to the left this white color is. So if I wanted to move this further over this way to the more of the middle, you're going to get a thicker stroke. So I just want you guys to be aware of that. It's great to see here because you can see what it looks like without them kind of being morphed together. And so I would move this over. I think that's like an appropriate size, maybe even thinner. And so yeah, a way to add a stroke. And then let's think here. Let's create a cell shader, right? We did that before. So double click here. Let's rename this one cell. And we're going to open this up. And, well, first of all, let's delete this one. And throw this one here. Come on. Onto the volume mesh builder. We're going to double click and open this. And then we're going to, again, turn everything off except for the luminance. And we're going to go into the luminance panel here. And under texture, we're going to click there. And we want the cell shader, which is under sketch and tune. Remember that. And then we'll select cell. Here, that. All right. And let's double click the cell shader to go into the options. Now remember that right now the highlight, which is this white color, is being generated by the camera, and we do not want that. No, we want it to be generated by the lights. And so I'm going to uncheck the camera and check on the lights, or turn it on, toggle it on, right? And we don't have to animate that. We just want it as what it is. Now, there are no lights in our scene. And so we have to actually add a light in order for this to work. I'm just going to add a regular one. And then I'm going to, when I start to bring this up, you're going to start to see and move this back and over where I can kind of control the, where the light is being generated from. So let's say I wanted it further over here. Maybe up a little bit higher so it's towards the top, maybe back over this way. Looks like it needs to come forward towards me a little bit. So I'm going to do that. There we go. Kind of, that's really head on. I'd probably move it this way. There we go. That's pretty neat. Increase the resolution right here by that little triangle. And then I want to go in here and let's double click here. We can change the colors here. Obviously, if we start shifting this around, this is going to be the percentage that it's shown on here. Obviously, I'm blowing out the highlights that way, so I can make a thinner highlight by moving this little node to the right. I'd probably want this to be the midtones there. You can change like that, right? You can move this over a little bit more. And you can just mess around kind of with your gradient and the way you want it to look here within the cell shader based on the lights. Remember, you have to have the lights in there in order to do that. And yeah, and you can just adjust the light to wherever you want it to be in order for it to show like a highlight that you think looks good on there. And then we would want to bring this into After Effects, right? There is another way that we can do this to also, let's do a couple things first. Let's render this out like this. So I'm going to go into my render settings. And this is good for you guys to go through and do this. So let's start at the top. We want to be in the standard renderer. And we want to, let me see. I want it to be specific. We want to make sure, obviously this has to be 1920 by 1080. So we want it longer. And we want to make sure we're at 24 frames a second. And then we want all frames. And that under save, we pick a location to save. So let's do that right now. PNG sequence. Open that up, and we're going to add that here. And I am going to select alpha channel and make sure that this is PNG. And then under anti-aliasing, this is the first time you guys are going to do this, we want to change this from geometry to best. And remember, so that's going to give us the shadows where things are joining. And then I think that should be good. Obviously, I would want to rename this. Let's name this flat color because I'm going to close this out and then I'm going to delete this cell shader one on here and I'm going to add the animated flat color to the mesh, making sure that it does that still. Yep, the animation happens. And then let's go ahead and render this out. Let's just hit render view. Let it render. And while we're doing that, let's load up After Effects. And I'm going to show you another way to get the objects to look. New project, file, save as. Let's save it to here. New folder, AE. Colorscope. Save. And let's see where we are. I think it should be done by now. Okay, great. It is done. And then I'm going to render one out where it is all gray. We're going to take this off here and just use this default. And then I'm going to render this one out as well. No, I want to cancel this. Let's add this to, go to render settings. I'm going to put this in a different folder here. Right click, new folder, gray. Right click there. No color. Save that. Close that. Everything's good. And we're going to render. And while we're doing that, we're going to come back here. And we are going to import a file. And that file is going to be the PNG sequence. Flat color right there. Make sure PNG sequence is marked. Import it. And we're going to have a composition made already. And I want to go in here and interpret my footage. Right click, interpret footage, main, 24. And then make sure that this composition that was created is also 24 frames a second. Okay, there we go. And we're going to, let's see here. This one should be done. Cool. I don't want to close that just quite yet. Let's import the next one. It's a sequence import. Okay. Again, interpret the footage to 24. And we're going to open this one and Control K to change the project settings and change this to 24. Cool. All right, so the one thing that you could do, obviously I did this from far away, right? The cool thing here is that with this light in the scene, we get this interesting look of like shadows and stuff happening. Well, if you were to select this layer and you go into your effects and you go to tint, this is the other way that you can make it, under color correction. I just drop that down onto my layer here. And then I go ahead and I change the color to my purple color. And then this one, I can select that purple and then go in here and turn it to like a lighter purple so it's never fully white, right? Like the like a light color that's on your color palette. And then this gives a nice flat imagery as well. And you still get like these shadows happening. You don't have to do this with a light in the scene. But this is a great way to show that. And then there is also another kind of tint under color correction. Let's do this real quick. Color correction. Tritone. Tritone is another one that is very similar to tint, except it looks at the shadows, the highlights, and the midtones. So let's say I wanted it to be like this was my midtone, was this purple. The highlights were this purple. And the shadows were, I don't know, let's go in here and make this a nice dark purple there. And then you have more, it's like gives you more of that flat effect, right? And it only gives you those highlights in very specific areas. I'm going to shut off this one. Let's see if that does anything. That does. So stacking them also makes them look different, right? But you can control more of the colors that you have here based on what you input into these parameters right here. Now, the nice thing, right, is that we made a PNG sequence, so I can always go in and add a solid, right, a different type of violet here. Let's say I went over here. This is my main color. I'm going to bring it down a little bit, make it a little more blue, make it like a kind of eggplant or plum, and drop this below, right? And so then you have this flat looking type of texture as well onto it. I would almost shut this one off, and maybe this one works a little bit better. I think the tint might work a little bit better for this, but you know, here's just a different way to kind of add that flat looking. It looks better, I would say, if there is no light in your scene in your 3D scene. But let's kind of go over here where plane it goes, and it morphs into the color that we need. Obviously, we need maybe a little bit more time here. I think it's closer to 3 seconds. Yeah, this is obviously was too short there. Perfect. Look how cool that looks with the flat, right? So then if I were to take this background, copy it, paste it into here, drop it down. Oh my gosh, that, I'm sorry if that hurts your guys' eyes, but yeah. And then you can always, like, if that issue comes up, right, you can always add that tint to the to your actual object to add it. Or I would actually do probably like I would do like a levels change, or I would change the saturation and brightness, or I would use the curves. The curves here. I'm like, oh, I just need this slightly brighter, slightly darker so that it shows up, right? So a little bit of photo editing that you can use inside of After Effects here. Let me think. So you've got 4 different ways to make materials. Is what I showed you. I showed you guys a little bit about morphing using shapes, and then using the volume builder mesher, but then also using like spline created shapes, right? So let's get actually let's go back to this one right here. And I'm going to delete this solid off the back. And let's say we created it like this, but we want to add a stroke to this. You can add a stroke by, I think you can use find edges here. And I will drop that onto my PNG. It's going to turn white. That is okay. I think we have to, inverting there is okay. But what we want to do is we want to duplicate this. The bottom one, we don't want this on. But this top one right here, you add the find edges to the duplicate, and then you change the blending mode to multiply, which will get rid of the white and just leave the one, and then you should have it. I'm not sure why it is not specifically showing on here. Again, this is only if you need the stroke. Let me zoom in. Why aren't you working? Invert there. Maybe if we change it to screen. Ah, that's a way you can do it. So you can invert it and add it to screen. You can also find edges is kind of funny. But this should, I mean, this overlay doesn't work because you want to let's add this to multiply, but then let's add a levels to it to see if we can crush those whites. Under color correction, you're just going to add a levels right under here. Then you're going to bring this up further this way. Let me change this blend mode again to screen, to, how did I do that? Invert and screen worked for me. So the further that you start to push this over, I would maybe not use this technique to draw a stroke around it. This will work for some things, but for this, I'm not sure. I'll have to look at this again. I feel like the levels has to be in there. Normal. It's like you can see there's a slight little green like halo around that. I might look more into this for you guys, but in the meantime, use just the other one to create that. Let me see. I think the stroke here, the generate stroke, is going to just add. It's not going to do, it's for something else. This is for animating. This one won't work. But yeah, let's try something else instead. Let's, oh, motion blur, right? You want motion blur on your animations, but this is not a shape layer, and so it will not, you can't just add like Gaussian blur or just turning on the motion blur down here. It won't work like that. You have to add pixel blur, so it'll blur the pixels, because this is what we have. Pixel motion blur. And we'll add that to there, and then notice all of a sudden it's a little blurry there. And we can increase the shutter samples and stuff to change that. And then if we're playing, it's going to chug along a lot harder. It's going to take a lot more energy to do so. Let me put this back down to 5. So maybe it can, I'll drop this down to like a 3rd. There we go. But we have right here where they're in motion. If I bring this up to full resolution, we have blur happening right there, right? Which is neat. So we can increase this to like 10. To increase that a little bit more. So that is the way that you would want to add blur onto your 3D scene. Let me see, where are we at? We have a half an hour left. Let me think. Let me kind of create maybe like a tracer line over. Are you guys still, who's still in the chat? Do you guys want me to create something like tracing something in Cinema 4D? Or do you want me to create like an exploding object in Cinema 4D? Or do you want me to kind of do something where it looks like trim paths with the volume builder in Cinema 4D? So I can have like a volume basically like moving along a line, or like it's like an extrusion moving along a line. I could make that heart that I created explode, so like a breaking heart. I'm gonna close this. First one in the chat who lets me know gets the pick. You gonna pick? You're all, I'm still here. What do you want to see? You want to see an exploding heart? You want to see, because we kind of have, I'm going to go through one, and then we'll see if we have time for more, but I can trace the line, kind of using cappuccino. Using like we'll use like a tracer object, or I can kind of do essentially like a trim path thing inside of Cinema 4D. Let's do, I'm going to do since I already have the heart, we're gonna do like an exploding heart. And then whatever you say, if you say something different, I'll do that as well. Okay. So we kind of talked about this when we did the let's add the cell shader to this extrude. When we did the ice, when I was telling Eric how to use the ice effect of the like broken ice, right? And so, I'm going to see that. And so, cool, let's explode. The one thing that we wanted to use is the Voronoi fracture. And so that one's in here. Not in this one. It is this one. Under the cloner. And you're going to add a Voronoi fracture to your thing. And then you're going to drop this, like this heart shape we made into here, right? And so we want to explode this heart. But as soon as I hit play, watch what happens. Nothing at the moment. Let me see if that does that again when I reset. No, interesting. There's no dynamics automatically added. Kind of surprised. Normally it drops to the ground, but maybe it saved my, if you select the Voronoi fracture and you go down to, I think under object, huh, where is it? No, this isn't it. Just give me a second, guys. Sorry. Trying to find. Remember, if you add you can change how many of these little sections you have. I'll do this right now. If you add another distribution source and you click on that, and you can increase the point amount, right? So we can have additional like sections if you want to do that. Like if you want to have multiple breaks happening in one spot. But I'm just going to increase this for now to there. And then I thought it would be under geometry glue, effector selections. I'm not sure why I'm not getting. I selected the right one. Let's delete this real quick. Let's pull this extrude out of here and delete this one. We're going to add a new one. And let's just say I make a cube and I drop that cube into here. Is it going to give me the options? Why is it not giving me? Oh, I'm such a nerd. Okay, this is why. Obviously, okay, let's just delete this cube and let's drop this back in. It's because I haven't added a tag to this, right? It needs a rigid body tag. We talked about this last week as well. Let me go on to back to the connectors, detailing here, sorting sources, this one, the sources, where I can select that and increase the amount. We'll just do 80. And I want to add a rigid body tag to the actual modifier here, which is a Voronoi fracture. So I'm going to right click there, and it's under bullet tags. Or you can just Shift C to select. But when I click on this, now when I play this, it is going to drop to the ground. That's not what we want. We don't want gravity essentially affecting that to happen. And so one way you can do that is you can turn, I think, the dynamics off there. Well, actually, let's not do it that way. Let's shut off the gravity in the entire project. And so I'm going to do that by hitting Control D. And under bullet right here, you're going to select that. And where it says gravity down here, you're going to put in 0. 0. And so then when I select this rigid body tag and I go into, I think, the collision tag, and the size increment is the more you increase this, the chunks will like fly away from them faster. So like, but as soon as I play this, right, even if I have this at 0, now that there's no gravity, or nope, I have to increase that first. If I go to the rigid body tag and under collision, increase the size increment here. We'll put that at 4. The higher the number, the faster the pieces are going to explode out from each other, right? But as soon as I push that, these pieces just go flying everywhere. And so then let's say there's way too many pieces. So I would go back into the Voronoi fracture and I would drop this down to like 60. And maybe even less than that, maybe like 40. And then I'm going to go back into the rigid body tag here. I'm going to drop this down to 2 under the collision tag. And so I can play that. And they're kind of like floating in space, right? Well, if I add, let's add my cell shader onto the Voronoi fracture, right? And so when I hit Command R, I'm going to see that there. Now the thing is when you're using dynamics, you can't look through, you can't really scrub through the animation and see exactly what's happening. Like it has to stop and it has to think about it, right? It has to go back to the beginning and do this. I would probably move my light source or move my camera so that I get a, we'll do that, and then we'll move it this way, and then we'll zoom in. Oh, I do not want, there. Oh, come on, shut this off real quick. Reset the frame. It's doing something crazy. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not letting me move to the this way, to the right. I'm not sure why that is happening. I think it's because I'm looking at something's going on with the camera. There we go. Okay. I don't know. I feel like this happened before. Let me just Control R so we can see the light there, and then as this thing explodes, you Control R and you can see all the light is getting affecting all of these little pieces as well. But let's say we wanted to smooth these pieces out, right? We don't want them chunky or like hard edges. So we can essentially do the same thing using the volume mesher and builder. So I'm going to add the builder, add the mesher, drop the builder into the mesher, and then drop the Voronoi fracture into the builder here. And then I'm going to select the builder and add a smoothing onto that. But we don't want the smoothing to happen right away, so let's drop this down to here until this is fully kind of broken up here. So let's say right here, is that I want to change the strength there. I'm going to move forward, and I want them to be, I don't know, much higher. And then increase the voxel, decrease the voxel size to like 2. Not increasing, but decreasing. And then let's increase the smoothness and animate that strength. So then they start off rigid, but then they smooth off into like these soft looking shapes. Great way to explode a planet, right? If you guys are doing a space themed one. And then as soon as I hit Control R, remember that this texture has to be on the mesher, not on the Voronoi fracture, right? So if this is, if you're going to smooth it out, make sure you put that on the volume mesher, your material, and not on anything below it. The volume mesher is the one that has to have the material on it. And so, yeah, it looks particularly cool with that, the volume shader, because, or I'm sorry, the cell shader, because of how the light interacts with this, right? You can always change the light as well. Let's do a tracer real quick. We'll do one more. We have a few minutes left. Let's just hide this. All right, and so let me go ahead in here, and I'm going to go into my front view, and I'm going to Shift-C, search for cappuccino, and I'm going to double click on that and then just dock this, possibly. Grab that hamburger menu. Come on now. Dock that there. Cool. And I'm going to start real time. And then I'm going to just kind of grab this and move it all around here. Right? To say that I want it to move along this crazy spline that I created, except I had the volume mesher selected when I did that. I don't want anything selected. Let me close this down because I don't really want to see that either. So I'm just going to start real time. And I think I have to add a null into here. Let's add a null and just name this like stroke. And then select this null and then hit start real time. And then when I start to move it, it's going to create a spline here. And that null will move along that spline, right? If I play this. It does not do that. Let me see. Anyways, so we've created this spline. We're using the null. We have to create a null first, and then we use cappuccino to create kind of like a shape. And then let's add a tracer to this. So I believe that is under, it's not going to be under subdivision surfaces. Tracer. And we want to, actually, we don't drop the shape. We're not going to parent anything in here. Let me go back here to my main view. What I want to do is I want to select the tracer, and down here in the object properties is what you want to add that to. So I already had that selected, my stroke selected, but if I didn't, I would just grab this stroke and I would drop it, drag and drop it down here. So the link is being traced to that. I'm going to close that cappuccino panel because I don't really need it anymore. If you were going to create another stroke and do this on a separate one, remember to click off and then, or to create a different null and then do it again. So we have the tracer selected and we put the object under the property. And then under limit right here, we want to change it from none to from end. And then we're going to increase the amount that we had there. Let's just do an even 100. And this is all fine and dandy, but we really need to add some kind of geometry, right, to it because nothing's happening. So we have the stroke there. Watch when all of a sudden I add the volume mesher and the volume builder. Mesher, builder, drop that builder into the mesher, drop that tracer into the builder, and we should have some kind of from start 100. Do I have to drop that in? Let me see there. I feel like this should work. Let me just play. Okay, that's why, is I needed this to happen. So then let's take the stroke back out of this, right? Okay, and now it should be following along. There we go. It's because it started here further on my timeline. That is why it's not showing. It wasn't showing it. It's because I have it, for some reason, all of my keyframes are down here. So let me just go back here. Because that's where I started it, obviously. Oop, never mind, we'll just continue. Let's redo this real quick. Drop the stroke under there. Okay. Delete. We have our stroke that we have drawn. Let me bring this up here and move these all the way back here so that we can start at the beginning. And let's just kind of move this back out of the way. All right, now we're going to add the tracer, which is right here. The tracer, we're going to grab this stroke and we're going to drop it into the link right here. We're going to change the limit to none to back to from n, and then we're going to increase the amount. I'll do 100. And then we want to add this into the volume builder. So we're going to drop that in. And then we're going to add that also into the volume mesher, where we drop the builder into that. And then as I scrub along the timeline, you will see that is coming up like that. Let's decrease the voxel size to like 2, maybe a little bit higher to like 5. That looks good. And you could smooth this out, right? Bring this down here. Smoothing changes the kind of the width of your line that's going there. And let's select the volume builder, and let's select the tracer within this volume builder. And we can update the scale of this, or kind of where it's happening. Let me actually delete the smooth. Let's just select this tracer. If I grab these ends right here, you can start to see what's happening. These little vertices that are on this graph are linked to the ends of your animation right here, where the null is, right? And so if I bring this in, it lengthens how much of the line that we see. And then I could add another vertex to this. So if I bring that over there, and I think I can do that by if I grab the pen. Can I do it that way? wrong pen. Can I do it this way? Nope. But I basically can change kind of like the tapering effect that's happening on here. I can drop it down to make this will increase or decrease the width of the line as well. Let's increase the radius will also do that, how thick it is. Density, don't really have to worry about that right now. Let's say we only wanted to see, like only a small section of the line. So I'm going to select that, grab this here, and just kind of move it in. And then that way when you play it along here, you have just this small little section kind of bouncing around with like it's like tracing it, right? There's a tracer tail kind of added onto it. And remember on the spline or the stroke, what you can do is you can select all these points, I believe. If you are in the point mode, can you select it? No. Okay, so you just want a smoother motion there, or just create like a spline, right? You can do it with the spline as well. And let's select the tracer, right? Like if we want to, one more thing, if we want to adjust the length of the tail, if I select the tracer and decrease the amount, let me see if I move this along here. I thought that should work. 30, 10. No, not 310. 30. I guess that really doesn't matter as much as when we go into the volume builder. Maybe if I do that and bring it back to the original, kind of, right? And then I go into the tracer. Let's see if that helps. That does not work as well. Select this tracer, maybe do it here. Let's decrease that voxel size to 3. That kind of gives like a cool like dripping off effect. Add the smooth into it. That does that. Increasing the strength. The smoother makes it look really nice. I just don't want to do that. Yeah, just taking this here essentially and messing around with the scale right here allows you to shorten or lengthen that tail. And so then when I play it, it's going to look like a little wiggly thing that's kind of going across the screen, like a trail, like, you know. So several ways to do things in class today. There is some more techniques for you guys to know. Let's save that. There's a video I want to link to you guys for that. I'm going to copy it right now. And it includes different techniques. I'm going to add that to Canvas for you guys. But this is why getting these design briefs completed by the first is so important, right? Is so that we can look at the different scenes that you guys have or that you want to do, and kind of try and decide if it's going to be a 2D scene. We'll think of a way to execute it in 2D. And if it's going to be a 3D scene, we'll think of a way to execute it in 3D. But we can't do that unless you guys give me those and I can review them. And we can kind of go over some different techniques. So I am going to add this techniques kind of video. I'm going to copy this and add like either add another module or update the modules to show these techniques where these are. And then link additional one that where last semester we went over how to create like kind of a kaleidoscope for a background, using the repeaters more in depth, creating kind of waves for like water or something like that, creating a cloth-like object instead of a 4D, using trim paths to grow things like a flower, different things like that, right? And so just remember to take the knowledge that you've learned in this class and really apply it to 80% of your video. 80 or 90% of your video should be techniques you already know how to execute. The other 20 to 10% should be maybe something you need to learn how to do, right? So I look forward to seeing everyone's work. I'm happy you guys joined today. And if you have any questions, let me know. The participation question for next week, there will be one, and it will be dedicated solely to, the reel and the Colorscope project. So other than that, I hope you guys have a good night, and I will see you guys on Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend as well. Bye.